Our next session is a little bit different than what we had so far. We're going to talk about when and why to outsource QA. And in order to do so, I brought two amazing agency owners. One is Jay Aigner, which is the CEO and CTO of JDA QA. And I was able to say it correctly.
Nice
I
job.
practiced at home. And Ben Fellows, who is the CEO and founder of Loop QA. And we're going to do a quick discussion, an open discussion about questions on when and why we should outsource QA. Earlier today in the EU session, I had Simon from Adder talking about their journey to outsource from one point of view. So as I mentioned, again, you're going to receive the recordings so you can hear his insights, but now we're going to hear insights from actually the other side of the table, people who are getting the outsource project and can advise you on some tips. So before I actually hand over to questions, if you don't mind, Jay, Ben, let's start with you. Jay, can you introduce yourself, say a few words about who you are, what is your company focus areas, and so on?
Yes. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. My name is Jay Aigner. I run JDA QA. We're based about an hour north of Philadelphia. We specialize in the Philadelphia market, but we work nationally. We work with high growth SaaS companies and custom software development shops. We provide fully outsourced QA teams and people, and we do automation consulting as well. And our goal is pretty simple, which is to let dev and product teams build, and we'll own the QA.
Thank you, Jay. Ben?
Yeah, so my name is Ben Fellows, founder and CEO of Loop QA. Thank you again for that intro. I'm going to echo what Jay said. I'm going to start off with the caveat that I have a 2-year-old in the next room over. So if any point she starts crying, I just got her down for a nap. I apologize. I will mute myself, but that's the world of working from home. We had childcare fall through today. Yeah, so very similar to Jay, we provide embedded QA team members based in the States. We basically try to specialize in mid to senior QA. My journey actually started in politics of all things. I was able to join a startup and got into QA very much accidentally, and have really fallen in love with the industry and really looking forward to talking a little bit more about it today.
Amazing. Thank you both. And I'm going to start with the first question. Ben, I'm going to hand that one to you when we still have your kids asleep for now. And I think the first one is about what are the most common reasons companies come to you for QA outsourcing? There could be reasons, but what are the most common ones?
Yeah, so there's a couple, and I'll start off by saying our goal in an outsourced capacity is oftentimes not to be the permanent solution. It's to be a bridge while our clients are kind of figuring out what they want to do internally. Ultimately, QA is something that is really important that you own it internally and have practices, and having embedded engineers or outsourced engineers, I think, can really help provide you the time and space to do it right. So when it comes to reasons, there's a couple different ones. Honestly, at least in the States here, the number one is it takes a lot of time and effort to try to make the right QA hire. There's not a great feeder system when it comes to QA in the United States. And so the number one reason for startups oftentimes is they're making their first QA hire. They just don't want to have to go through the process of trying to get it right. And so they'll work with us instead. And then the second is more legacy focused, and it's oftentimes a modernization play where they have an existing QA team. They just want one or two people to come in and kind of help revamp the processes, get an outside set of eyes to help kind of work with things. And in that case, we come in for like 6 months to 12 months and we help kind of modernize. So those are kind of the two core reasons. There's a lot of other ones like bugs are just hitting production and why, like these other questions, but I could go on and on. But those are the two big ones.
Great. Jay, do you agree?
Yes, I fully agree. Is that good enough? Do you want something else? Do you want something more? I think if you're going to ask the next question, which I feel is similar, I'll let you lead.
I will. No, the only question that I had was about do you agree with, I think, a debate, and I'll challenge a bit, Ben, if you don't mind.
Hit me. Love it.
The debate, because I think the question is, can you fully outsource QA as a turnkey versus Ben's statement that QA should be mostly owned or should be an in-house owner rather than outsourcing the activities?
I think it totally depends on your appetite for owning, building, and maturing the QA function in your organization. We work with some engineering leaders that love that quality assurance is part of their stack that they want to own and understand and really get into. The ones that don't are typically our customers who just have it on their list of things to do that they know there's product quality issues. They're hearing from their CEO and the board, why can't we get more features out? And all they can say is because we don't have enough manual testers or automation in place. And we've seen, even Fortune 100 companies that cannot get automation in place because typically those teams get started, they get pulled off for other fires, and every company just about that we've come to in that size has 5 to 10 different half-baked solutions that have never really been fully implemented. Nobody has the time to do it, and so we kind of come in as the assassins. We get it done. We don't have the distractions to be pulled off. So we do project-based engagements to kind of do those sort of efforts. But to answer your question directly, yes, we've grown with companies that we were their first QA person on the entire team. There was 3 developers. They got acquired after having 200 to 300, people and 50 developers, and we grew with them the whole entire time to where we had 10 or 15 people on the team. So I think it just depends on the engineering leadership's appetite to own quality assurance, as opposed to just building, cool products, which is what some of them want to do. Which is why newer engineering leaders are typically our best customer, because one of the 500 things on their list is like fix QA. And if we can come in and just take that off their plate entirely, they're very happy to hand that over to us.
Okay, good. You see, it's more than a yes. Now I hand over to the question. Are there any specific stages? You kind of addressed that, but I'm going to still ask it in a more concrete way. Are there any specific stages in company growth or product lifecycle when outsourcing QA makes the most sense?
That's me.
Yeah, go for it.
You're going to start.
Yes. There's kind of the 0 to 1 where, developers and CEOs and product people are all doing the testing and there's no formal QA around. That's kind of step 1. There's, typically a company goes to raise money, Series A or Series B, and they go, oh my God, we need people. That's phase 2. And then you get into the mid-market and enterprise where they spin up entire projects that have more budget than most startups have, revenue for 5 years, right? I mean, some of our bigger clients have just massive budgets and they can hand off an entire project with millions of dollars in budget. So those are kind of the 3 big ones, from 0 to 1, that scale up phase after raising. And then when you're really big, when you have projects to run that you just don't want to pull your internal team off on.
I think that's a very good answer. I want to, sorry, Ben, go ahead and then I'll add some.
No. All of you, go for it.
I think that addressing to additional to stages is that connecting to what you said about growth earlier in the morning, Simon mentioned one of the differences between managing an in-house team versus outsourcing is that when you manage an in-house team, a lot of the manager's time is spent on managing. Okay, you have you got to have a one-on-one with each one of your employees. You got to do, the company policy requires you to do biannual employee assessment. So if you have a team of 7 or 8 people, you find yourself that at least half of your week is spent on managerial tasks. And even if you have the knowledge and the capability, you just don't have a time span to do anything you want, especially if you need to double the team, that becomes very challenging if you don't double management skills as well. So I think this is also a good point about growth. And when you grow fast and you need delivery very fast, this is also a good point addressing to what you've mentioned, Jay. Ben, do you have a different intake?
No, I agree with both you guys on this one. So I think that I'm in lockstep, and I'm sure there's other questions. So I won't take up any more time on that.
There are. Okay. Now this is a same question, but a different point of view. What are specific signs? Now, a lot of our audience are internal QA leaders. Okay. And what would be a good point for, honestly, when you look on your team or on the requirements for you to say, okay, let's try to bring in external support?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind, and I think it depends on the size of the company, type of company. The most obvious one is bugs in production, right? Like, hey, we're putting in a lot of effort, and we're still getting customer calls. Like one of the things that we talk about as ultimately providing a technical solution for an emotional problem. Like you can see the toll that it takes on a team when you don't have quality really locked in, right? And you can start to see the toll on the customer service team, the bugs of sort of hot fixes, all these different components. There's
Hold
more
on,
nuanced ones.
hold on.
Oh,
I think
go
this
ahead.
sentence requires repeating because I think you said it and you said quite calmly, but I think in the concept of this event, we should repeat this sentence a little bit because this is about getting connecting to Siva's session from just before, getting management approval and getting a seat at the table and getting appreciated. I think what you talked about, the emotional toll, it's, I want you to say it again.
Yeah. Well, so what we say internally is we provide a technical solution for an emotional problem, right? Like ultimately, quality comes down to the word trust for me. Like it is anyone who's building software has made an engagement, sort of a relationship and a commitment to a customer that this app will do this thing that you are expecting it to do. And with that is a level of trust. And it's very different than just you going in and buying a pair of Nike shoes and then having this one-time transaction. This is like deeply rooted trust where these people are coming back to your app all day long. And ultimately, trust is something that's not technical, it's emotional, right? And so ultimately, when it comes to quality, what we talk about is we provide technical solutions for an emotional problem. Bugs at their core are technical, right? But what the actual symptom or outcome of it is emotional, right? And so I sort of say that offhanding. I get a lot of eye rolls from my team whenever I say that because I think they're just kind of like you're just being the cliche CEO who says stuff like that. But it's fundamentally my
But we
journey in
want to
QA.
talk,
Go ahead.
we want to talk CEO language. I think this is the transition exactly. This is why I loved it because I think so many of QA people don't talk this jargon. Okay, they understand bugs, they understand production, but having the ability to translate the technical stuff that you do into business, into customer requirements, into this is a shift that must be taken. I love it. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, no, no. And we'll get more into AI and some of the other impacts where I think we're all going to have more time to sort of have even more fuzzy boundaries of kind of what we do and how we do it. And the more we can sort of see the whole picture, I think the better. The only thing that I was going to end with was, stuff like bottlenecks. It's not just bugs in production. It's how stuff is flowing through, fast flowing through the CI/CD. And then there's even stuff like, even more hidden stuff. How often do tickets get failed? Like, there's a lot of really interesting sort of underlying components in QA that are not obvious when it comes to like evaluating is a QA team effective because so much of it's about process and sort of culture change just as much as about testing. But Jay, I'm curious, where would you add or push back on?
I don't think I'd push back. I'd love all of it. I would just say missed release dates and kind of aligning, um, and to both of you guys' point, expectations at the board and CEO level rarely trickle down to like the reality of QA on the ground. And it's like they want more stuff out quicker. And the way to do that is not necessarily just to hire more manual engineers or to like get the latest and greatest tool, although all those things do help. Some of the products that we've worked on couldn't release more than once every 6 months, right? And it's like they want to release every 2 weeks. And it's like, how do you solve that problem? And it's not a very cut and dry problem, but at the end of the day, it's typically what's coming into QA versus what's coming out of QA. And like if you can kind of put constraints around what's coming in, you can kind of control what's coming out. And as long as you understand the middle piece, then you can kind of have some idea of what the cadence should be for that. So that's one of the bigger things. And tool selection is not easy, and it's very easy to fall into a trap of some guy on your team knows QA, and just like Ben, like I fell into QA, and I would imagine most people on this panels and these calls are all have fallen into QA. There's no, QA university on the next to Harvard. It's just like we all kind of ended here somehow, and so like best practices aren't really ingrained in everyone, and like it's you learn different stuff from different people, and we come in a lot of times to the tool selection process is very important. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the AI stuff as well, but like knowing what tool is the right fit, knowing what's not overkill, knowing how to upskill your team and bringing in people who know that technology already saves a lot of time and a lot of heartache. And again, I'm going to keep kind of saying it because it's continual, a battlefield of just, half done projects that are spun up in QA automation. And that's what's going to happen if you don't pick the right tool and you don't have the right people to do it and you don't give them the right amount of time to implement it, right? I think we're all used to being, I think I posted a meme earlier that was about like, developers estimating testers story point time for testing, right? Like how would they know how long it's going to take to test something? Same thing with test automation. Like nobody really knows on the development team or on the executive team or on the board how long this stuff is going to take. So we see that a lot when we come in. It's like they don't understand the actual effort that's required to make these right tool selections, implement it correctly, and then maintain those in a way that's useful for the product and not just to say they have automation in place.
Amazing. Okay. Same again, we're keeping on the same line of thought, but I would ask, what would you consider a successful outsource engagement? How does it look?
I think you're up, Jay.
All right. Successful QA engagement. We're getting better at this. And I think to Ben's point, like there's some metrics that have been traditionally overlooked. I think defect count and complexity over time is something that should be a little more understood and kind of bubble to the surface, right? Because there is some level of confidence you can say, if that number is going down and we're releasing less bugs into production, then things are getting better, right? So it's hard to quantify a lot of things we do in QA. Like if I implement best practices somewhere, that doesn't necessarily show up in a release somewhere, or it doesn't show up on some, board report. It's kind of ingrained into the culture of the team and how they work and how they believe in the process. And like Ben said again, like trust is huge. So alignment on goals at the beginning that you can carry on through the life of the engagement and kind of had checkpoints to make sure you're good along the way. For us, we want to be your QA team. So there's not, always tradition that can end. It's just you're continuing to pump out high quality software that's getting better every release. And I think, something that I've always harped on, and I think everybody that's in QA, I'll say most everybody, I've definitely met some people that don't have this trait, but like clear communication is something that we bring to the table that some development team members, I'm not going to, single anybody out, are not great at doing. We're like the kind of the glue in between a bunch of different departments, including the clients themselves. So if there's clear communication along the way, and we've improved the quality of the software, we consider that a win. That's a successful engagement for us.
Ben?
Yeah, I'll echo that. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to walk on you.
No, exactly. I was directing the question to you.
So our sort of structure basically assumes that everyone has a definition of success, and that is both at an org level as well as an individual level. And I actually think that this system applies to everyone in companies when you're playing the politics of a company. So everyone has a definition of success. The first thing you have to understand is, does the value that you're providing align with that definition of success, right? So if the definition of success is there's no bugs in production, then the value that you're providing has to be related to getting no bugs in production. One of the most common things that'll happen, though, is the definition of success will start as no bugs in production or something like that. And then after 12 months, the definition of success will be changed, even if it's not explicitly changed, to how do we get the best quality outcome for the cheapest possible amount of spend under this budgetary restriction. And if you don't see that definition of success change, or you don't catch that, suddenly you're left getting your contract cut or you're getting laid off or something like that, right? If you move up that ladder, well, in order to provide value, what process changes need to be in place? So you're proposing a solution, or we're as an outsourced person proposing a solution. So let's say I want to bring Playwright in, or I want to bring automation in. Well, what process changes need to happen in order for Playwright to be able to provide value, right? And you can, and then assuming that Playwright is able to provide value, is it mapped to a definition of success? So we sort of look at it, those three. I completely ripped that from some guy. And I'm desperately trying to remember his name so I don't like not give credit.
Jay was his name.
Who?
Jay Aigner, I think.
Oh, Jay Aigner. Yeah, I got it. So yeah, to summarize, anytime that you're providing a solution, make sure you understand what process changes need to be put in place for that solution to be able to provide value. And then always make sure that the value that you're providing aligns with the definition of success, and then keep the definition of success as a living thing, because the value that you're providing might sometimes start to go out of alignment with the definition of success. And then remember, everyone has their own definitions of success. That's how we think about it. And that has nothing to do with QA, transparently. That's just
And I
account management
wanted to
and
say
politics.
that this also doesn't, that this is again a brilliant answer that has, it's very much not limited to outsource. I think that also internally within, even if you don't work with outsource whatsoever and you are an internal QA team, the definition of success from and expectations from you do vary. And you are sometimes expected to do much more with way less, as you said, in this economy, in those budget change, you could do it exactly the same that you've done 6 months ago or a year ago, but now it's no longer considered success because the economy changed, the expectations have changed, and you need to catch up. I think this is a very strong point, and understanding this is the direction towards success, even internally, not just in outsource. This is an amazing point. So a bonus point, even if you're not talking about outsourcing. My next question, and Ben, this will be directed to you first, is about how do you ensure your team as an outsource is aligns with the client's development cadence and context, assuming you're doing a turnkey solution on your own.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we're providing QA engineers. I think that this comes down to communication more than anything. One of the things that we talk about as being QA is that like we basically strength respects strength. And what I mean by that is that like oftentimes I feel like a lot of QA people can get a little bit run over. And in a weird way, like the more that you're able to push back, I think the more respect that we earn. That being said, that's a very broad statement that oftentimes might not apply. So like if anyone here disagrees with me, feel free. That's super fair. But generally speaking, when it comes to alignment, we kind of have to force our way into that oftentimes. Like this is the communication we need, this is the standards we need, call people out for when it's not good enough. And like in a weird way, like the first time you call people out, they're kind of going to react a bit like confused and maybe a bit upset. But then after like one or two times, they start to realize like, oh, you're an asset. You're here to help me. So no, generally speaking, I think that that's to me how we focus on alignment is really just like have our standards, have our processes, and then just and we also have the benefit of like what's the worst that they can do? Fire us? Like we're an outsourcing firm. So it's not like it's that end of the world. Like obviously we don't want to, but we also like we don't have to engage with the same level of maybe politics that an internal firm might someone might feel sort of more pressured to. So yeah, shorter answer, but that's kind of my feelings on it.
Jay, do you want to address and then I'll comment? I think it's interesting. It's an interesting point for discussion.
It is a very interesting point for discussion. I agree, definitely. I will say that something that we've discovered over the years is there's certainly a difference in expectation and how we try to present ourselves as contractors as opposed to being an internal QA person. I've always felt as an internal QA person, you were the water cooler, right? You could stand around and complain to people and you could, kind of play the game internally. And I do feel like on our side, we have to be a little more diplomatic when it comes to the way that we bring things up. We don't want to come across as just, these jerks that people don't want to work with, but also find the balance of like standing up and, obviously QA takes the lead is the name of this. And I totally wholeheartedly believe in that. We just try to strike the balance. Now, if they're the lead QA person or if they're, we're working at somebody at the C level, it's easier for us to have those very direct conversations because they appreciate that. If you're, maybe a little bit lower in the stack where, a QA person is annoyed or kind of expressing that frustration in a non-constructive way about the lack of process or, something like that, it may ruffle some feathers in the wrong way. Not that we try to avoid ruffling feathers, but we do try to be as diplomatic as possible. So I agree with, and I know that's not what Ben was saying. I just wanted to point out that like internal versus external, and we've definitely had that kind of growing pains of having people transition from being internal to external because there's certain ways you have to act and certain ways you have to present yourself and certain maybe arguments you would not engage in, not as an external outsourced partner, that some things just don't matter compared to the things that are internal, right? The way that somebody talks or the way that somebody acts, or you have to be a little more soft when it comes to just the stuff you let flow over your shoulder. But I totally agree. Like when it comes to representing product quality, we are the last line of defense. Like we are the ones that get it before it goes out the door. So you have to play nice in our world, but also, be firm and as far as alignment goes with, specifically dev cadence, as an outsourced company that has onshore and offshore people, just the simple stuff, right? Like real-time collaboration with time zones are huge. Like being able to talk at the same time. I think in the early 2000s, there was very much a throw it over the fence to a firm somewhere in the the Middle East or somewhere in Europe, and like we'll get it when it comes back in the morning, and it's just like this loop of nonstop. And that's what I built, kind of an anti-agency approach for what we do, where it's like we don't want that like toss a bomb over. And that's even how it was when I worked in an office 9 to 5. It was we were literally had a wall between us and development. They would walk over and hand us a CD with the latest stuff on it, and it's like kind of run back to the other side before we found the problems with it. I feel like it's a much more collaborative environment these days. So just working in the same time zone is huge, and the same tool stack, working in the kind of the same sprints, doing all the same, being part of the team, being embedded as their QA resource has allowed us to align with the devs cadence.
I think this is a great answer, and I'll do some internal promotion here to address what you're saying. As I mentioned, part of the things that we do, other than those events and selling a product, is that we conduct a state of testing survey, and for the past, I think, 10 years. And one thing that surprised me for the first year and stopped surprising me when I realized how correct it is, connecting with what you just said, is that we ask people what is the number one skill a QA person should have, and year over year, the number one skill that's being rated is communication. And I think it's all about communication. Now, as you mentioned, there is difference in how communication looks like if you're an in-house versus outsourced, and the stuff you're willing to accept, and also how much you can push back, not being afraid to lose your job, or keeping in mind that you are the last line of defense. But it all comes down to communication. And I think this was very well said in different approaches. Thanks for this. And I think we don't have tons of time, but I think this one is important because this is coming from your lessons. You've done more projects than most people are doing, because most people are outsourcing once or twice on their own project, and you've seen numerous. What would be the biggest mistake you see companies when they start to outsource?
I think I'm up, if I remember, Jay, or are you up?
I think you're up.
I think
All
you're
right.
up. Go for it.
Biggest one is you don't have a definition of success. I know that's the same language, but it's kind of shocking to me in many ways how often like times people know they have a quality problem, once again, because they can see it. They can see that their team is emotionally feeling it. They know that there's bugs, but they don't have actual tracking of metrics. They don't know how often tickets are being failed by QA. There's a lot of like a lack of metrics. And so I think the biggest mistake is and it's kind of what I would talk about as like, you can stop the bleeding oftentimes. This is a bad analogy, I guess, but I guess I'm just gonna say it. You can stop the bleeding, but like oftentimes there's a reason why it was bleeding in the first place, right? So it's like if you lost an arm, we can stop that, but there's more fundamental reasons like why you lost the arm in the first place, right? So on that note, I think that the biggest thing there is just know what success is being measured as. The only other thing I'll add, because we only have 2 more minutes, and we didn't touch on AI at all. More and more, I feel like companies that I'm working with that allow us to use Cursor and some of these other things in the right way, we're able to do 4 or 5x the amount of impact that we're able to do when we're not allowed to use some of these tools. So I know communication is obviously the number one rated skill, but I'm starting to see a very large gap in productivity when it comes to the tooling specifically. And I think that more and more certain companies are going to get a little bit left behind by constraining their employees. Now, there's very legitimate reasons like security and stuff like that. Yeah. So I know you guys only have 1 more minute, so I will stop talking now.
I think this is also, Jay, before you address, I do want to comment the feedback from the audience that the question is, and this is connecting, Alfonso said that the question in the future is how companies will leverage more on AI versus outsourcing. And Ben, you kind of address connecting those two together. It's not one versus the other, it's one combining the other. Jay, your point, if you may.
Yes. And about that one real quick. Be the farmer who uses the tractor, right? Like just be the guy, be the company, be the person, be the QA person who uses the next tool don't be afraid of it. It's not going to take your job, right? It's the people who were afraid of the computer that lost their job. The people who learned to use the computer succeeded and well surpassed anybody that had anything before them. Reasons, biggest mistakes, I would say treating QA outsource as a silo, right? Trying to just like have it over here and like be its own thing. And like, that's not going to work. Underestimating onboarding is the other one. It takes time to understand the process, become a subject matter expert on the product, get to know your team, the stakeholders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So don't try to like make this a Band-Aid fix. If you really want to fix your QA problem, you have to spend the time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears to engage with another team, bring them in, make sure they're embedded just like anybody else in your team before you start to write them off as them not being the solution to your problem.
I love that answer. There is an underlying metaphor here about blood and Band-Aid, but I think those are hard-learned lessons that both of you, that comes
Lots
from
of tears.
Yes, from blood and tears. I'd like to thank you both for taking the time to talk with us, to talk with me today,